Today, we're going to dive into the really tense but also fascinating relationship between words and pictures. What started out as a huge fight over who got to control reality it's evolved into one of the most powerful storytelling partnerships of our modern world. It's something that shapes everything, from the stories a nation tells about itself to our own most private memories. This quote from the artist Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, it just nails it, right? He saw, almost 100 years ago, that photography wasn't just some new gadget. It was a whole new language. It was a fundamental shift in how we talk to each other and how we remember our world. And that single idea, it's the key to everything we're about to get into. So, picture this. It's the 19th century. Photography bursts onto the scene, and it feels like a miracle. But for the literary world, it felt like a profound threat. For centuries, writers were the undisputed masters of representation. They built entire worlds. And then, all of a sudden, here comes a machine that can capture reality in an instant. It called the writer's very authority into question, and the core conflict was just so clear. On one side, you have the author, this lone genius figure spinning worlds out of nothing but words. And on the other side, photography, a mechanical process that could turn the author's face, their own body, into public property. All at once, writers were at risk of losing their mystique and the control over their own image. And this wasn't some theoretical debate, It was deeply personal. Take this fantastic line from a character in Herman Melville's novel Pierre. When a publisher demands his portrait, an early type of photo called the daguerreotype, he's told his face is now public property. Pierre's furious, visceral reaction just perfectly captures that intense resistance many writers felt. They saw the camera as this invasive, almost violent force. And lest you think this is just some dusty 19th century anxiety, it's not. This quote is from the famously reclusive author Thomas Pynchon, and it came after a CNN crew tried to film him. It just goes to show you how this tension is still around. That desire for an author to exist only through their words, totally separate from their physical image, is very, very much alive.
But here's where the story takes a turn. Out of all that conflict, a really powerful alliance started to form. Instead of fighting photography, writers and artists began to harness its power. From illustrated expeditions that literally built national myths to the sophisticated graphic novels we have today, these two media started a conversation that would change storytelling forever.
A perfect early example of this is the Great American Westward Expansion. Expeditions by guys like John Wesley Powell in the 1870s were absolutely crucial. They used photography and illustration not just to document the great unknown, but to actively shape it, to create a heroic national myth of the American West for an audience back east who'd never seen it. And this chart shows you exactly how that myth-making worked. The expedition photograph on the left shows the landscape as it actually was. Scrub brush, desolate terrain. But the illustration on the right, the one made for the public back east, it completely transforms that reality. It becomes this romantic, heroic view of towering peaks and soft light. The text told a story of adventure, and the illustrations made you feel it, even if the camera was telling a different truth. This alliance between word and image just exploded, creating whole new genres. In the 1950s, you have the book The Lonely Doll by Dare Wright, which used these haunting photos to build an intimate world for children. And eventually, the collaboration hit a new level of maturity with a graphic novel, where the complex dance between text and image is the story, allowing for these incredibly sophisticated narratives. Which brings us to maybe the most profound consequence of this whole alliance. It hasn't just changed how we tell stories. It has fundamentally rewired our connection to the past. It raises this really deep question. How is it possible for us to remember historical traumas or events we never, ever experienced ourselves? Well, the answer lies in this powerful concept from the scholar Marianne Hirsch, post-memory. It's not direct memory. Think of it as an inherited connection, felt most strongly by the children of trauma survivors. They grow up surrounded by stories, by silences, and especially by photographs of a past that's so powerful, it starts to feel like their own. a memory built from the images and narratives they've inherited. And there is no more powerful example of this than Art Spiegelman's graphic novel Mouse. To visualize his father's experience in the Holocaust, an experience Art himself did not live through, he draws an image based on a famous archival photograph of liberated prisoners. But he adds an arrow, points to an anonymous figure, and labels him Papa. In that single move, a public archival image is adopted into the family album, becoming a site of personal inherited trauma. That is post-memory in action. This very personal process of inheriting memory through images, it points to a much broader condition. As the theorist Guy Debord argued, we all live in a society of the spectacle. It's a world where our social relationships, our very sense of reality, are no longer direct. Instead, they're filtered and mediated by a constant flood of images. We don't just see the world, we see it through a screen. So, what happens when you try to break that mediation? The artist M. Ho explored this in a really striking project. She took sections from newspapers covering the Iraq War and meticulously erased all the text, the headlines, the captions, the articles, leaving only the photographs, just floating there in the blank column. Ho's work forces us to confront the question right there on the screen. What happens when an image is left wordless? Without any text to anchor them, the photographs are suddenly set adrift. Their meaning becomes unstable. We're forced to confront not just the image, but our own unfiltered reaction to it. You start to wonder how much of what we understand is just what we're told to see. So, from an initial battle for authority, the written word and the photograph have entered into this complex, powerful, and often dangerous symbiosis. Together, they build worlds, they create myths, and they shape our memories. Which leaves us with a final thought. The next time you're scrolling your feed or you see a photo in the news, just pause. Ask yourself not just what story the words and images are telling you, but what story, what truth they might be silencing.